Of Senior Council. Good evening to our members of Parliament of both houses. A special good evening to Mr. Kemrad Sicharan, our UNC candidate for the Debe South by-election and soon to be another UNC councillor for the Debe South region. A special good evening as well too to all persons viewing and listening to our virtual platform and to our UNC Nation family. Welcome to you this afternoon. This being my first opportunity to speak to you on this virtual platform, I thought to myself that I should bring greetings and salutations, well wishes for a Happy New Year. But then when I had a read of the newspapers and recognized that we are 49 murders, more murders than days that in this month of January, I recognize that it would not be a Happy New Year for most persons. It could not be a Happy New Year for persons who are struggling during this COVID-19 pandemic, persons who are under the brunt of this failing healthcare system, both the current healthcare system and the parallel healthcare system. It could not be a Happy New Year for citizens within our country who are not being able to access social services, the most vulnerable persons within our country not being able to procure those social services. It could not be a Happy New Year for many young people and young children who are unable to access proper education under this PNM administration. And it could not be a Happy New Year for most persons within our country who are plagued by the rising crime and criminality within our country. And that is why I'm here this evening. That is why most of us are here this evening, to bring a proper report to you, the citizens of this country, with the failing grade that is passing as governance within this country under the PNM administration, and in particular with respect to crime and criminality. My friends, every story, inclusive of horror stories, which we are experiencing within this country, has a genesis, has a beginning. And this particular horror story has its genesis rooted with respect to an appointment made last year, April 2021. You see, around that time, the Prime Minister decided to shuffle his deck of jokers, and he appointed a particular joker in that of Fitzgerald Ethelbert Heinz as your Minister of National Security. And Minister Heinz comes with a certain degree of expertise in this ministry. He has the expertise of managing the Ministry of National Security through press conferences, an ability beyond all other ministers to spew vitriol and political propaganda at press conferences. And in terms of doing so, he does it in a particular fashion, unmatched by any other minister within the PNM administration, that he could turn a media press conference that is being hosted and held by persons who are sought to be independent within our country, members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, members of the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service, other members of the Ministry of National Security, independent press conferences. He chooses to transform it into a political platform to spew political propaganda. And we don't expect anything much more from him. And as of April, moving quickly down into June of 2021, we recognize another milestone under the PNM administration. Many persons would know that around that particular time, there was the tenure of the Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith, coming to an end, and a responsible administration would have put things in place to ensure a seamless transition, either renewing the contract of Gary Griffith or transitioning to a new Commissioner of Police. But what did they do? We all know the settled fact that the Police Service Commission has the responsibility, mandated under the Constitution, Section 123(1), to appoint through a process by order the Commissioner of Police or Acting Commissioner of Police, as the case may be. It should be a seamless process. It's a process known to us, one that has been established for quite some time. The process pursuant to this order created by the government that was being utilized all the time. There's a 2009 order, a 2015 order. We debated it just recently in Parliament. And those orders worked quite well. The PNM utilized those orders. They utilized those orders to appoint Gary Griffith in the first place. But for some reason, the orders fell out of favor. And the Attorney General at that point in time, Faris Alvarez, decided that the order didn't work anymore. And he drafted a new order in 2021. And what was the result of that order? The order was drafted particularly to find favor for one person. What we in the legal profession like to call ad hominem legislation. Legislation specifically designed to favor one person instead of the masses. That is what was done. But that legislation did not find favor with the courts, because the courts struck down the legislation and deemed it unconstitutional and ultra-virus. The legislation also didn't find favor with Faris's cabinet colleagues. And why should it? This is the same man who, by virtue of a tweet, indicated to you that he was busy New Year's Eve night drafting legislation, firework legislation, that also found stark condemnation from his cabinet colleagues. That found stark condemnation from many persons within society. So it was no surprise that his cabinet colleagues took issue and umbrage with that legislation, that order of 2021. And what happened? Thereafter, you had all of these political interferences and interaction with this constitutionally mandated organization, the Police Service Commission, that is charged with this significant responsibility. An organization that was supposed to be independent, free from political interference. But that wasn't the case. You had playing out for the first time in the history of this country, a chairman of this Police Service Commission carrying a document to President's house, being excited by some type of information, retracting a document, and then we were left with the first time in this history, no police commissioner. No police commissioner, no acting police commissioner, no one to pilot one of the most independent and important organizations within this country, responsible for peace and law and order within the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. But that is governance under the PNM administration. That they will attempt to interfere with something as sacred as the Police Service Commission to effect their will and their way. To hell with the Constitution. What is that? A piece of paper. They don't pay any respect or mind to that. But we've grown accustomed to that. And as we continue to divulge and delve deeper into this slippery slope of crime and criminality under the PNM administration, we move quickly on to November of 2021. And around that time, my friends, cast your mind back. You'd remember that the prison service came out with a press conference and indicated to the public that they'd stumbled upon a plot by prisoners incarcerated behind prison walls. A hit list for prison officers. A hit list for prison officers in this country, little old sweet Trinidad and Tobago. And instead of being a responsible, aggressive Minister of National Security, to come out and indicate and tell us as a public what the solutions would have been to that problem, he comes out and indicates, well, listen, it have a lot of prison officers who engage in nefarious activity. And this may very well be as a result of those activities. That is what he told us. That is what he told the members of the Ministry of National Security who serve in our nation's prisons. And while officers began to be slaughtered by the hands of members of those prisoners, he kept quiet. He kept quiet until that day in December of 2021. Many of us would remember that there are certain significant crimes that take place within our country, that no matter how much prayers you can pray and that you can say, that will wash those crimes away. And this particular crime mirrored an event that took place about 2 years ago, where a mother was carrying her child to a graduation and she was gunned down in daylight. And in this situation, a father carrying his daughter to a taxi stand was gunned down. He wasn't gunned down at 6 o'clock in the evening. He wasn't gunned down at 10 o'clock at night. He was gunned down at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And he wasn't gunned down in some back street or in some alley. He was gunned down on a high street in this country. And what did the Minister of National Security do? had an press conference. And what did he tell you in that press conference? He didn't speak about that dead prison officer. He didn't speak about the aggressive solutions that he was going to mandate to take place that very said day to capture those perpetrators who committed such an atrocious act. No, he came out to tell you about some firearm report from OLEP, the Organization of Law Enforcement Policy in the Ministry of National Security. And that is the level of stark disrespect meted out by that Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Heinz, and the PNM administration. And we move along into December, where all of these things happening and playing out in the public domain are taking note by international persons in the international community. And there was an incident in December where two children, Venezuelan children, who found themselves here in Trinidad and Tobago looking for a better life, to spend time with their father who is legally here, were swept up by arms of the Ministry of National Security. A father who petitioned the Immigration Division to get some answers. And the bleeding heart that our leader, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, has. What did she do? In the dead of the night, she telephoned all the lawyers of the party that we had to get together, and we all started to put together a writ of habeas corpus to rescue those children. And again, in the dead of the night, those children were deported without having had proper consultation with their father or any legal representative. That is governance under this PNM administration. That is how Fitzgerald Heinz treats with his responsibility as Minister of National Security. And the sad tale of woe doesn't end there, my friends. At the beginning of this year, January 2022, when persons should be organizing themselves accordingly for a brighter and better day, where the tide should be turning, you have peaceful protesters in Queen's Park, Savannah, being shot at with tear gas. And a commissioner of police who's grown to be a mouthpiece for the government is coming out to tell you and to tell me that they were throwing missiles at the police. I want to ask the commissioner of police, how many of those persons that you allege that were throwing missiles were arrested and actually charged for throwing missiles? What about the body cameras that these police officers were supposed to have? How many of those persons were captured on those cameras actually throwing missiles? Was anybody actually ever throwing missiles? Or was that an excuse to utilize a weapon of destruction like tear gas on our citizens in a peaceful democratic process? That is governance under PNM administration. And we call upon you, the citizens of this country, to reject that type of governance. What do we want as a responsible opposition? We want you to tell them no to activities like that. We want the Prime Minister to do the right thing for the first time in 7 years and fire Fitzgerald Heinz as Minister of National Security. We want the Prime Minister and the Cabinet at large to give us real answers with what took place with respect to the Police Service Commission. We don't want any political interference in any organization, independent or otherwise, within this country. That is what we want as a responsible opposition. We want to highlight and bring to you, especially members of the public, to understand and appreciate the level of inequality being experienced within this country. Something that I like to call PNM Privilege. And what is PNM Privilege? You all know it. PNM Privilege occurs when the son of a minister who loses his phone, and within a matter of hours, all arms of the Ministry of National Security is activated to go and get back that phone. That is PNM Privilege. What is PNM Privilege? PNM Privilege is when your family members benefit from millions of dollars based upon loans that you taxpayers have to repay. That is PNM Privilege. PNM Privilege is when you have family members making millions of dollars in rental income. That is PNM Privilege. And PNM Privilege does not only extend to persons within the PNM. You would think that because you are a card-carrying member of the PNM or you vote PNM, you'll be PNM Privilege as well. No, sir. That is not the case. Because you still have to line up and look for a job. And the same jobs that they promised to give you, they aren't safe anymore. Because PNM privilege didn't extend to WASA workers. It is not going to extend to TSCT workers. It is not going to extend to port workers. It wouldn't extend to T&Tech workers. And it definitely didn't extend to persons working at Petrotrin. So we call upon you to say no to PNM privilege as well. And when we call upon you at election time or any other time to say yes to the United National Congress, to say yes to our members of parliament fighting both inside the parliament and on the pavement and back again, to say yes to our political leader, Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar, to say yes to transparency and democracy and good governance. And the only political party well poised to bring back good governance in Trinidad and Tobago is the United National Congress. Thank you very much, my friends.